in helping people build and launch their no-code apps. So without having to code, without having to outsource, there are 5 specific things we never tell them to do or that we never do ourselves. And to be honest, some of these go a little bit against the grain, specifically the first one and the last one I want to share with you. But my hope is these things will help you build and launch your own app, but just a lot more easily. All right, so here's the first thing. We will never push people to invest in building their apps. And that does go a little bit against the grain because as a business, that's what we do. We help people build and launch their apps. And so saying that we will never push someone to invest in building their app can sound a little bit weird, but the reality is that is just not the right decision for everyone or all of the time, right? So one specific scenario where this really holds true is, for example, if someone is experiencing a period of financial uncertainty, it's really easy to think that, the app idea that they have is the thing that will take them out of that financial uncertainty, right? They have the app idea, they build it, they launch it, they now have a business, they're making money, and great. The thing is, building and launching an app and growing that into a successfully revenue generating business, it's not certain. In fact, it's very far from certain, right? That's just a fact. A lot of apps end up failing or they never hit the product market fit they're aiming for. It's just an uncertain path. And really launching any business is just an uncertain path. And so if you're experiencing a period of financial uncertainty, maybe you are between jobs or, whatever it is, I would want to see you pursue something that is going to more immediately and with more certainty start bringing in money for you so that you can then turn around and when the timing is right, you can invest in building your app. And do so with a lot less pressure. It's just a much better option, a much better situation. So we're never going to push someone to invest in building their app if it's really just not the right next move for them and in their situation. So here's the second thing. For entrepreneurs who we work with in going from idea to pilot app, we never answer every single one of their questions. Now that might sound a little bit weird and we certainly don't ignore questions. It's important to ask all the questions. But what I mean by that is we put a really strong emphasis on helping them understand the right questions to ask at the right time. And whether we ever work together in any formal capacity or not, this is something that's really important for you to be mindful of as you build and launch your own app. Because if you are going through this process right now, if you're watching this video, it's very likely this is the first time that you're building and launching an app. And so by default, you don't yet know what you don't know. And so it's easy to ask questions that are maybe a few steps ahead or maybe really far ahead of where you're actually at right now, or maybe at a higher level of complexity compared to where you should really be right now. And so it's easy to kind of get bogged down by all of that information. But it's really important, just as much as developing your app development skills themselves or developing your understanding of the methodology, it's just as important to gain an understanding of the right sequencing with building your app, with launching your app, building a business, growing a business. Sequencing is so incredibly important. And so we really push and encourage to keep your big picture vision in mind, certainly, but focus specifically and only on the 1 to 2 steps in front of you. It's really easy to feel like you need to know everything about a thing before you actually do the thing. But that just leads to so much information overload and overwhelm, and really just a lack of progress. By the way, if you have found any of this helpful so far, we have a free extended training over at coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop, where we'll take you through the first steps you need to go through to successfully build and launch your app. We cover strategy, methodology, we dig into the no-code tools, we'll even go through some development. So head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop to join in on that. Okay, here is the third thing. We never glorify the launch. So here's what I mean by that. Your first launch is not going to be like a grand opening where you open the doors to a perfect product and a flood of new users comes on board and you are off to the races. That's not how it's going to be. Your first launch and anybody's first launch, it is imperfect. It's a little bit stressful. It is messy at times, and it is not glorious. But it's sometimes hard to expect that, because the thing is, when you hear about any new app or any new product, it has already gone through its first launch. It is past that stage. Even if the first time you are hearing about it looks like the product is just launching, right? It has already gone through its first launch and you just never saw that. And so a lot of apps and products that you see on the market, they make it look easy in a way, but it's just not the reality. When you go through your first launch, you're not going to feel ready. Things are going to come up. It is going to be stressful. It is going to feel messy. That is how it goes. And so, to me, glorifying a first launch is misleading, because if you don't expect the messiness, the difficulty, if you don't expect all of that going into it, when it actually happens and you're going through the process and you're feeling all of these things, it's going to feel exceptionally difficult for you. For you personally, it's really easy to feel like it's easy for everybody else, but it's really hard for me. And therefore, that means I'm doing something wrong. Or maybe my idea wasn't the best one to pursue after all. And so glorifying that launch is misleading, because it just doesn't paint the experience in the right picture. But if you go into the first launch and you know that it is going to have its ups and downs, that is going to set the right expectations and allow you to, when you hit that milestone, which is still a really big one, but when you hit it and you experience it, you're not going to be feeling like, oh, it's just hard for me and therefore I'm doing something wrong. No, you're going to feel like this is it. I'm doing it, and this is just the next step that I have to get to on my way to that overarching success. Okay, so this fourth one seemingly contradicts the last one, but for the people who we work with, and what I hope for you too, we never downplay the first launch. And it could be really easy to do so, because the reality is the first launch of your app is really just like hitting the starting line, right? That is going to allow you to pursue all of the other growth that you're after. And so most people, when they are building out their first version app, the really big goals that they have in mind are things like hitting that first 10K month, or maybe that first 7-figure year, or whatever it is, whatever you're dreaming of. Like, those are the things that feel exciting. And so when you cross that milestone off your list of hitting your very first launch, it can feel a little bit underwhelming, because it's really putting you at the starting line of being able to hit those bigger goals. But the truth is, there's so much work that goes into reaching that first launch. And that milestone is the one that the vast majority of people who have ideas for apps, ideas for products, for businesses, that's the one the vast majority of people never hit. So it's something that you should be incredibly proud of when you get there, or if you've gotten there already. It's a major accomplishment. So never downplay that. Even if you have bigger goals in mind, that is the thing that is going to set you up to achieve them. And most people never get there. So this leads us to number 5. The last thing is something that is actually controversial to a lot of people. We never lead someone to believe that improving the aesthetic design of their first version app is going to be the key to them getting all the users that they're after or getting to that next level of success with their apps, because a first version app should really focus on function first with a simple, clean, uncluttered, yet usable design. So it's not that design isn't important, but it should really focus on usability versus aesthetics. What I see often happening is a founder will go through the development of their first version app, and they will have that first version appropriate design, but either they are finding it hard to find users, or maybe they just won't internally let themselves put a product out there that doesn't look super professional or sleek. And so instead of taking that next step of bringing the users on board or figuring out how to get their users on board, they just dive into aesthetic design. They pour a bunch of time into it, a bunch of money into it, and I hate seeing that because it can very easily lead to a pursuit, an endless pursuit of an ineffective solution. With your first version app, with an appropriate first version aesthetic design, you should be able to find users, get the feedback that you're after, and improve the product. And in later stages, then justify your focus on the aesthetic design. But if you focus on that early on as being the key to unlocking that next level of success, it is really just not the right approach to take, because it's going to lead to spending lots of time on something that you don't really need to be focusing on right now. All right, so those are the 5 things that we never say to our own entrepreneurs or tell them to do, and I really hope they're helpful for you too. And if they are, then the content you're about to see on the screen is going to help you take it even further.